Hello everyone, this is Kingrats here. Welcome back to the channel, guys. So officially the 2025 NHL Eastern Conference Final concluded last night with the Florida Panthers winning Game 5 and defeating the Carolina Hurricanes, and they will move on to the Stanley Cup Final as this year's Eastern Conference champion. This marks the third straight year that the Panthers have made the Stanley Cup Final in the NHL, which makes them the 9th team in NHL history to do that. And of course, this is now the sixth time in 6 seasons that a team from Florida has won the Eastern Conference in the playoffs. Of course, the Lightning did this for 3 years in a row from 2020 to 2022. For Florida, they will move on and face either the Edmonton Oilers or the Dallas Stars in the Stanley Cup Final. Right now, it's looking like Edmonton might be seeing them again, considering they have a 3-1 series lead and they could win the series tonight. But for Carolina, this marks the end of probably another disappointing ending for their NHL season. Compared to previous years, at least, they actually did win a game in the conference final, which was their first win in the third round since 2006. But in my opinion, it's just still disappointing. This is a team that still has a great amount of talent. They should have been able to do more damage and be more successful in this round of the playoffs, especially considering that they had more time off compared to the Panthers going into this series, and it just did not look like themselves at all. In this video, I'm going to be discussing why the Carolina Hurricanes fell apart in the conference finals again, and what exactly do they look like going into the offseason. If you guys like my content, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content if you like this one, and without further ado, let's begin. The first thing I want to talk about is the goaltending, because this is very much the easiest explanation for why the Hurricanes fell apart in the playoffs. To start, if you look at every game and the final score, it was basically a blowout, especially in the first 3 games when the Panthers put in at least 5 to 6 goals each game. It was just an absolute disaster on the goaltending side of things. Frederik Andersen, who had played the bulk of the playoffs for the Hurricanes in goal, he was lit up in both games 1 and 2, and his performance was so awful that the Hurricanes decided to pivot to Pyotr Kochetkov for Game 3, and that was even more of a disaster. Ultimately, they brought back Frederik Andersen. He looked good in Game 4. They had a 3-0 shutout in that game, and then Game 5, just everything fell apart for them again. I think if they were able to get at least a few more key saves from Andersen, or even if Kochetkov stepped up in Game 3, then maybe things would have been better for Carolina. It is extremely disappointing that the goaltending and the defense, I think, as well to a certain degree, fell apart the way it did. There were a lot of goals in the early part of the series that Andersen probably should have had. Of course, if you want to look into Game 5 in particular, I think that game, Carolina was basically in full control there when they were up 2-0, and then all of a sudden Andersen gave up a pair of goals in a matter of a minute or something, and it completely changed the complexion of the game. Florida had all the momentum, Carolina barely was able to keep around with them, and things just fell apart. So honestly, I have to kind of pin this on Andersen. I mean, he has historically struggled in elimination games. His record isn't pretty, even though he has been a successful playoff performer in goal. He has had instances where, a bad goal is given up here and there, and it ultimately becomes a difference maker. Kochetkov, it would have been nice to see him maybe step things up and really prove himself as the backup when Andersen was out for Game 3 and Kochetkov came in, but he couldn't rise to the occasion, which is unfortunate. Number 2 is also probably the lack of offense. Now, of course, we can go back to the trade deadline when everybody was basically thinking that the Canes completely failed in this year's trade deadline because they had to give up on Mikko Rantanen and basically send him for picks and prospects. I would say, though, that Logan Stankoven actually was a pretty good pickup from them, but they couldn't really do anything to reinforce the roster, and they had a bit of a vacuum on the offensive side of the game. They have a bunch of great guys, don't get me wrong, like good role players, good guys with talent like Aho and Jarvis and Svechnikov, but at the same time, they probably needed like an extra punch in the forward group in order to maintain some of the momentum. In the early first 2 rounds, they were doing very good. I mean, they took advantage of a depleted Devils team. I've mentioned this time and time again. Go check out my video on that, by the way. And then in the second round, they basically smothered the Capitals that were one of the better offensive teams in the Eastern Conference, and they won the goalie battle pretty handily there as well. So the fact that Carolina, their entire scoring just dried up in the third round is just really mysterious, and it kind of is hard to explain. But I guess maybe it's the fact that Florida's defensive structure was just so perfect that the Canes really didn't have much of an answer for them. and they couldn't really find a solution until it was kind of too late. I mean, it took them basically like 3 games to actually get themselves like more than 2 goals, and that was the only 3-0 win that they got in this series in game 4. Yes, in game 5 things worked out a little bit as they had some success, but that was probably because of Aho just picking the point and getting the best shot possible off of Sergei Bobrovsky when they just, trickled through, I guess you could say. But yeah, I think if Carolina maybe had found some sort of reinforcements at the trade deadline, or if they just found an extra gear among their group of guys in their bottom 6 maybe, and get some extra scoring from there, or even the blue line for that matter, then maybe they would have been able to win a couple more games. So let's look at now the offseason outlook for the Hurricanes. So going into next season, they actually have tons of cap space. We're approaching like almost $30 million in cap space for Carolina going into the offseason right now, so they can make some major improvements in free agency if they want to. Obviously, the trade that saw Mikko Rantanen go to Dallas definitely hurt them, but they ultimately got tons of draft picks out of it. So they basically have now a surplus of draft picks over the next couple seasons. In 2026, they have 2 first-round picks. For example, they have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds in 2027. So they could probably use all those extra draft picks they got from Dallas in future trades. And at the same time, this was a roster that was kind of aging a little bit, and they've got a number of UFAs that they're going to have to maybe either think about bringing back or maybe just moving on entirely. So on the forward group, you've got Jesper Foss, Jack Roslovic, Eric Robinson, and Tyson Jost, who will all be UFAs at the end of the year. You also have to worry about future RFA candidates such as Logan Stankoven and Jackson Blake. Jackson Blake, who had a pretty good start to the season, and Stankoven was, I think, fantastic from his time in Dallas going into Carolina, and he definitely did good in the postseason as well. When it comes to defense, they also have Brent Burns and Dmitry Orlov as UFAs this offseason. I don't know if they bring them back. Orlov, they kind of overpaid for him a couple years ago. Brent Burns has consistently been good, even into his 40s, but the question mark is like how much longer is he going to be able to maintain this form, and I don't think it's going to be much longer. Everybody else is basically locked up. When it comes to their defense, the only other guys they have to worry about are basically their younger prospects like Alexander Nikishin and Scott Morrow in particular. Everybody else is basically kind of locked in. Their core guys in Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, they're all locked in for basically the rest of the decade, so they don't have to worry about anything there. And they've already kind of dealt with their goaltending situation. They re-signed Frederik Andersen to a 1-year contract. He is 35 though, so they'll have to look for more options there. And Kochetkov won't be a UFA until 2027-28. It kind of seems like a situation where Carolina should very well be going out and either trading for guys using their surplus of draft picks, or very well try to go for bigger free agents in the offseason that can give them that boost in talent and also support their depth. I would probably say the biggest thing for them is maybe making some adjustments to their bottom 6 and try to find some guys that can help provide them extra scoring punch, bringing more energy. Guys like Jordan Martinook and Stahl and Jankowski, who have worked out pretty well for them in the past. I would have to question the goaltending though, because if they run with the same goalie tandem for next season, are we going to expect different results? I mean, Anderson has been here a number of times before. He's kind of already failed at this for Carolina for a couple of years now. Kochetkov is still very young, so I think he could probably maybe take over that spot eventually, but they're going to need to find another goalie, maybe as a third string, to kind of help them out, especially because Anderson's now in his mid-30s. He has had a long injury history with Carolina, and they're probably going to need somebody as an extra net miner in case if he's out. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in the offseason for Carolina. It is disappointing, but at least they got themselves a 3rd round win and they can move on from there. So let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content like this one, and I'll see you all in my next video.